Raise the Standard Podcast. Because the standard you set shapes the life you build.
Hi, everybody. Raise the Standard Podcast. This is William Finley with my partner in crime, Coach Steve Richards. Coach, what's going on the east side of Honolulu today?
Well, the sun's out. I've had my coffee. I got to figure out what I'm going to do for the rest of the day now.
What do you have any games today or no, Saturday or Sunday? Yeah, coming up.
No, we've started a little program with the 2018s, which are U8s, U9s. So we've got their little academy tonight. So we're going to get them rocking and grooving tonight with their body mechanics and moving around. And we've got actually 32 players at the age of U8s.
And what Saturday, Sunday, you got league matches?
Yeah, my 2011's got a game on Saturday and a game on Sunday, and whoever wins that will probably end up winning the league. So,
Dave, you don't know this. Steve has come out here 9-10 months or so now. He's storming Norman, man. He's taken over the soccer community. His 15, 16-year-old boys are the state champions. They're be the best team on the island over the next number of years. They're going to be in Denver for the national championship. He's rocking and rolling. But with that being said, Steve, introduce our guest and let's get this thing going.
Yeah, I don't know how we're going to stop laughing today, but Dave Simeone, we've known Dave forever and a day. If you mention soccer, everyone's going to know Dave. And Dave, welcome aboard. And do you want to give a little introduction on yourself and let's get cracking here.
I don't know if I can give a self-introduction. That's going to be really hard, but it's great to be here with both of you, and I'm excited about the podcast that you're starting and our time we're going to spend together today. Right now, I'm the Director of Education Programs for United Soccer Coaches, formerly the National Soccer Coaches Association of America, and having a great time. Obviously, we offer everything through coaching education as well as the convention every year, membership. And so it's a handful. We're based here in KC. Previously, like both of you, we've spent a lot of time either coaching or directing in the game. And so I've been very fortunate to be a state director of coaching and national coach with the Federation, instructing both our courses here at the association and with United States Soccer Federation. And I've just been very, very lucky to have the career in football that I've had, and I'm very appreciative of it.
So, Dave, I know you're traveling all over the country in your role with the United Soccer Coaches, but what are some trending things you're seeing from your perspective in soccer at all the different levels, but with the coaching side in particular?
Well, the biggest thing right now, when I look at and compare, because understanding where we're at right now compared to 32 years ago, 8 World Cups ago, when we hosted in 1994 the men, and then in 99 the women. Probably I never would have foreseen in my lifetime being able to host the World Cup, let alone 2, and now let alone a second senior men's FIFA World Cup in my lifetime. It's unbelievable. But there are big differences now in the environment domestically, just in facilities. Let's just talk about facilities a little bit. I was about a year ago that the 2 countries that have developed the most soccer infrastructure in the last 10 years or so have been Saudi Arabia and the United States. And so we're not playing in Detroit this time. We're not playing in Soldier Field. They have organized it not only across 3 countries, but we're utilizing more venues like Sporting KC, which can hold around 27,000, I think, or something like that. So the environment's very, very different. I find it interesting that today in hosting in 2026, the amount of conversation that's going on about this is going to be transformational. My question with everything then is, well, what was 1994 if it wasn't transformational? It didn't have the MLS start at the backside of hosting the Men's World Cup in 1994. So it's very interesting. I mean, obviously, the money and the finances. I think in Qatar, the Men's World Cup was right around, and that was in 2022, was right around 2.1 or 2.2 billion. And the prices are so, and the money now that you see in the environment for seats and for hosting and for parking, first round game tickets, just comparing those prices, like I could see where this is going to end up at $4 billion or more. So I just think about those are things tangentially that people are talking about because it costs them more to park. It costs them more to attend a game. So it's so corporatized and it's so monetized that probably when we look back at this, it's going to cut a lot of normal, average fans who you might have seen at World Cups a World Cup 4 years ago, probably out of the equation of getting to a game in person, even though there's more games now than there were in 2022. So that's one thing that is on everybody's mind. I mean, as far as the footballing side of it goes, it's very interesting compared with when I moved to Texas in 1983 to do my graduate work at Midwestern State and coach with Howard Patterson. There was not very much in terms of opportunity for paid club coaching. And now that's all we have is kind of paid club coaching. People are talking about that. And of course, the infusion of private equity in all of this, which is going to make it really interesting. The soccer side of it, I think the trends, we're always going to come back to you have to coach players. You're going to have to figure out what it's going to be that you're going to measure improvement with. And then it's hard to see where coaching is going to actually be at the youth level in like 5 years because it's so permeated with technology. It's so permeated with iPads. It's so permeated with PowerPoints. It's very, very different. And the game itself, the trends in the game are so much more predicated on things like game models, player profiles, behavior, actions, decision. It's so organized and it is so infiltrated with technology that people are talking about that. I mean, because some of this is generational too. Some of it, the younger coaches that have a different set of experiences, or it's very different for them than those of us who have been coaching 35 or 40 years and looking at it and thinking sometimes, it's a little bit sterile. So I think those are some of the things that people are talking about. But the ball still has to roll. The referee still has to arbitrate, fortunately or unfortunately. And then the coaches need to figure out how to make the players better and their teams better. So that's always going to be a constant, isn't it?
Steve, go ahead and add into here, man.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, from when we first started going on our courses, which was majority of your stuff was on the field. You know, it was everything was your application, your delivery, the information you're going to deliver. And when I'm talking to coaches now and they're telling me, oh, we got a C license now, it takes a year to complete. You know, we used to probably do it over 4 weekends, you know, and the delivery of a PowerPoint presentation and video analysis and everything. I'm not sure if that's a good thing, and that puts a lot of people off. But what I'd like to get out of Dave is, you know, we got obviously a lot of young coaches coming out of college that want to do it for a living, you know, and as we all know, not a lot of people can do it for a living because finances now with youth clubs, you know, is kind of up there. But how would you say the standard is now, Dave, to like coaches coming on these courses? Or do they set standards for themselves, or do you have to implement the standard for them coming on the course? Where would you say that is nowadays?
Well, to your point, Steve, it's very different, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
What the expectations are, and it's even different because everything is in the process of redefining the role of the coach. So the coach now, you're right, in the coaching education environment with licenses, probably 70% of it is delivered virtually, online. We're heavily relying on adult education principles or research, which is adult education is based in autonomous learning, self-regulation. Some of that is really, it's good. You know, you give people the responsibility that they need to have in order to learn. Unfortunately, I'm not thoroughly convinced that society's built that way. I think a little bit of autonomy and self-regulation I think some of it's generational. So that's very different. And to your point, the biggest difference is what you're expected to produce. I think probably when you and I went through licenses, I know I took my C in 79, my B in 82, and my A in 87. It was about what you could, in the context of those 6 days at a coaching school, bring in as experience, absorb and learn. So much of it was based on adult learning principles, social learning, observation, mixing it in with what you already know, and then producing something on the field, the organization, the structure, and then your interaction with those in the session. So, and that was, you got a couple of 2-3 times to organize, coach, and teach. And I think the sentiment there, or the attachment, was, let's see an upward trend. Let's see a trend where you're getting better, you're learning. But it was very different. To your point, it was all about mostly what happened on the field. And now it's probably balanced in a different way, where you're being evaluated or assessed. Technology is a part of it, where now you, let's say in a C license, you utilize 2 video sessions and you're able to send 50 minutes to be assessed and everything. And that does make it more convenient. There's no question about that. It also complicates it because you're taking for granted part of the autonomous learning nature of coaches is they know how to work the technology. They know how to set it up. They know, based on the videoing guidelines, here's what you need to have incorporated into being able to see all the players, the whole field. And so there's a lot that you're parlaying out to them. And you take for granted that, well, everybody's going to conform to that. But it just leaves a little bit more latitude for folks to, this doesn't work out or this doesn't work out. It's complicated. It is more convenient. There's no question about that. But I think it's more complex because it's more geared towards concepts, applied theory. But in that application, you only got about 25, maybe 30% of the course is really on the field.
I think the biggest learning curve that I've seen, I came out here in '95 full time, and then we was coming out in the summer beforehand with, Robbie Stahl and with the post to post, is that the parents have got more of a buy-in now with their students than ever before. Before it used to be you was coaching the player. Right. Whereas the learning curve that I'm explaining a lot to the young coaches is your people skills, and the environment we're living now, which is that instant gratification entitlement, that's the part that's the hardest part now of coaching is you're not only coaching the kids, you're coaching the parents, and then the communication with the parents is vital. Otherwise, if you don't explain yourself and your communication skills aren't there, all of a sudden, if the team's not winning, you've got a posse on your hands, right? Because you've hidden your head in the sand and then dealt with it, and I found that the guys are kind of always communicating with the parents, are more influential in their delivery of everything else. Like what we do now a lot is we send out links to the players, which goes to the parents first, obviously, of, these are the sessions that we're looking to implement, and this is why, rather than this is what we're going to do and it's my way. It's like you have to explain your way now through and deviate through the obstacles a little bit, because some players are going to pick it up quicker, some players aren't. It's just like in a classroom. If you're an AP student, you're going to be bored to death in a regular class. So again, it's up to the coach to kind of weave their way through it. What would you say for a young coach starting out with the grassroots stuff, and then how to go through that development themselves as individuals?
Well, coaching parents has always been part of our environment. Coming from England 40 years ago, I mean, that's American parents, whether it's basketball, the expectations they have, plus you throw the whole funding part of it in, where people are paying for this and it's not the club funding it. And even then, I just think it's American culture, it's American nature, whether it's the individual youngster or the team, like we have this overwhelming appetite to just want to succeed. Now, I think what's changed with that, to your point about parents, it seems to me that parents were more willing to say to their kid, look, I can't get you there. You have to go pay the price. You have to go do what you need to do, learn how to figure it out, and then stay with it, right? But because of how many platforms there are now, how many clubs, accessibility becomes the key to mediocrity. Well, and I'd seen it being a club director, for instance, Cincinnati United Premier, good people, great area for soccer and a really good club. But at under 11, we had 5 or 6 teams. And intentionally, when you get to 14, you're going to get down one way or the other. You're going to get down to 2 teams. And the amount of, cajoling that there was, why is my kid in the 5th group and not the 4th group? Why is my kid in the 4th group? You're in. Nobody knows who is going to become like Einstein here, or who's going to be really good but decides to go play volleyball instead, or decides to go do piano instead, So I think that today, just because there's so much accessibility, well, it's fine. My kid's not in the first team and at 11. That's fine. I'll just go to another entity. They are in the first team, regardless if the entity is good, bad, or indifferent. Maybe they're playing in an entirely different platform that's not quite the same level. So I think all that's exacerbated now. And I don't know how you're ever going to put the toothpaste back in the tube. The amount of time I spent in Dallas and in Texas, always we knew. And there was such a large proportionality of the players whose parents worked at Standard Oil or at EDS with Ross Perot, or really high-performing corporate entities, and they would say, I know what it's like for my son or my daughter, whether they get to be a pro or not, or a national team player or not. I know how tough it is in that corporate world, and this is all preparation for whatever it is they're going to do, to be able to be resilient, to be tough, to be perseverant. And so I think now, because of the accessibility of all these different platforms, it's easier for the parent to go, I don't want to hear it. It's easier then for the kid to say, it's too hard. And so I'll go someplace where it's easier. And maybe I am talented, but I don't have to work as hard. I don't have to learn how to train. The standard is not quite as high as over here, where I had to grovel a little bit. I had to dig a little bit. I had to learn how to be better and what that takes. So I agree with you. I think for young coaches, in my experience, one of the areas that's kind of been detrimental is I'm good at emailing, I'm good at texting, and I'm perfectly comfortable if I have to say to you, hey, your son or your daughter is going to go from the B team to the A team. We're going to guest play them, or we're going to permanently put them. What's become tougher for young coaches, and it always was tough even for us when we were not so long in the tooth, was being able to say to a parent, for the benefit of your son or daughter and their overall long-term involvement, yeah, they're falling out of the A team, they're falling into the B team. The coaching is good, the programming is good. It's intended so that if they fall into the B team, they have a way back to the A team. Coaches communicating now, I think it's a combination of experience, and when you look at a young coach's experience getting to where they're 25, 26, 27, they're coaching, and they find this difficult, but they've been able to text people bad news. They've been able to write an email and they need the support. They need someone to show them how to have those conversations. And it's tougher for a young coach because you know what parents are thinking about too. They're like, you're 27 years old. You don't even have any kids. You have no clue about what this is like. And that there may be some truth to that, but it takes work. We need some mentoring for young coaches. They shouldn't assume. I think all of us were naive, a long time ago that, hey, I'm talking to parents as a 30-year-old coach, and I'm like, why don't they believe me? And it's just the natural. It's the way it is because they're looking at things whether through their own kids' prism or whatever. But and you learn that you have to talk to them on multiple occasions as groups, as individuals. You have to produce something that's written. You have to have individual conversations, and you have to demonstrate some courage in having those individual conversations and be okay with just listening, not being able to reiterate. Just be okay with listening. You might learn something,
We've just learned that obviously the age changes have just kicked in again for this tryouts semester type of thing, and some of the coaches were going, Steve, I don't think I can speak to the parents that they're going to go and play of age because the parents all hang out together and it's more of a social thing for the parents than the beneficial level for the player to be at, to play
That's right.
with no fear, right, of making a mistake and development, right? And I said to the especially here on the island, because you've got a very, you're very closed off to a lot of things.
Sure.
So we're using a mentorship program at the moment within the club where we're assigning coaches to more experienced coaches to have these delicate conversations, and obviously the parents go, well, depending on where they're going to be placed is if we stay with the club or not. Well, that's fine. It's like in the best interest of your player, they should be playing of age, and not keeping up with the Joneses by they want to play up. And we're going through all that now. I mean, even my program, we've got 34 2011s, which will be all moved off onto their age brackets unless they have the ability to be in the starting 11 where they're playing, but again, it's like I said to some of the parents, in high school, you've still got JV and varsity. And there's a reason why, because if you look at American football, there's no way a freshman's going to come in and play against a senior. They're going to get hurt, but if you say to a parent these days, sorry, but your player's going to have to be on the B team for development rather than the A team, they think it's a demotion, because the parents I feel the parents think that winning is a development for their individual rather than, no, it's the development aspect of it. Winning's not the development aspect for the player. So it's interesting watching, and obviously we all know what a director of coaching is all about. It's meant to be director of coaching, but the nickname for it now is director of complaints. Because even me now here, most of my job is on the computer for at least 4 hours a day, dealing with player evaluations and assessments and where they need to be at, what you need to hit at a certain part of the season. And that's without us talking about the MLS Next and what those coaches have to go through with the game analysis and player analysis and everything else like that. But it's interesting to see what's going to happen this year, where they're going back to the original age brackets. What Bill, what do you obviously you've been out of the game a little bit compared to where you was coaching, but with your profession, what you do for a living, how would you advise a young coach to address tough situations, not just that, but tough situations.
Yeah, there's so much with the coaching in just in life in general. You got to have wise people skills. I mean, you've got to be very careful, especially if you're a younger coach, as Dave was alluding to. A 23, 24-year-old coach, and they're trying to talk to parents that have so much more life experience, and the coach comes in, really whatever that age may be, and tries to maybe be something that they're not at that stage of their coaching career. Maybe they haven't earned the respect yet, whatever it looks like. So that's such a moving target, dealing with parents, and Steve, just hearing what you're dealing with out here in Hawaii. It's a whole different mindset anymore. But if you can develop your as a young coach, if you can develop your really strong people skills, listen to your mentor, and Dave hit on a really important part there. There's got to be more mentorship, for the younger coaches coming into it. You start putting some of those pieces together and just observing the personality and the dynamic of the parents and their interaction with their kid. It'll pay off a huge dividend for you as you're understanding those relationships, and then how you need to approach each parent individually as a family and their kid. It just takes time to learn those skills. Yeah.
What I do, just to let you guys know, and Dave's the same as me, you create your personality, sometimes a dry sense of humor to kind of get your point over, and don't come over as I am type of thing, but you make suggestions. And my two guys that I'm mentoring at the moment, they see me now when a parent comes up for practice, before we start, I go and have a chat with the parents. Hey, how are you doing? What's going on? And again, my kids show up an hour before. It's not because they need it. It's that I have 20 minutes of talking to the parents as they come up while the kids are getting ready, going through their warm-up procedure. And at the same time, I'm witnessing the players warming up to evaluate who is going to start in my starting 11. But it's my time with the parents, getting the parents, understanding the parents. That way I can then understand my players, where they're coming from, right? When they show up early, because I have a chat with them. How was school? You're doing your finals. You're in the middle of this. Because again, a lot of the social aspect of it affects their performance on the field. And I don't think a lot of coaches dig into what's going on between four walls or in a drive home in the car, right? To get to know their players and what buttons to push, and at the same time getting to know the parents. Some young coaches are scared and they just stay away from the parents. Where I think then if you get to a relationship with the parents, then it's easier to have these conversations when you feel as if the player's not ready to move on or move up to the level they need to be. Like, we're going to nationals in Denver, and we've had to name 15 out of a squad of 30, and some of the parents thought it was a slap in the face originally because the player wasn't named, and then I explained to them why they wasn't named, because, one, it's an investment for you to go out there, and it's a result-driven tournament, and you can't keep making, changes to the rhythm of the game, the flow of the game. And you're not going to put a player in a situation to fail, so it's you're not ready to go to that tournament yet because of A, B, C, and they was fine with that once we had that conversation with them. But some coaches just slap the starting lineup online or something, and parents are now got the nose out of joint a little bit because why is my kid not on that starting 18? So
I think you're hitting a great point, Steve. That again, you're reemphasizing. You said it multiple times. relationship. You build those relationships and you build that dynamic. Open door policy to a degree just goes a long ways to help in those conversations.
I think it's the same as being around people like Dave, though, on these courses, because I shadowed Dave quite a bit in Washington State. Even at my age, I shadowed Dave because I thought he was awesome what he did, and could I learn something from him? I mean, I learned something from my assistant coach. You got to keep an open mind, and you learn from everybody. And there's some coaches you've been coached by, you go, I'm never going to coach like that, and you just start building your profile. I'm always open to learning. I mean, I'll go and watch anybody's session, and just nick a little bit from here and paste a little bit there, and now I've got a new session. So.
Well, I want to caution you. When Dave came out and visited us a couple times a few years back, and I shadowed him, we found ourselves in some places at 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Maybe I shouldn't have shadowed him. I should have stayed home. Yeah. I'm not saying anything else, Coach.
Hopefully we're getting him back again this August when he puts a proposal in for me,
Let's just hope the statute of limitations have run out on those presumed indictments. But, to your point, Steve, we're capable of doing more than one thing at a time. So, to your point, that tournament in Denver, it does, because you don't spend a couple of $1,000s per kid to go there. You're trying to advance. So you can't bring kids that are going to sit on the bench. It's not good for the team. It's not good for it's not good. I mean, it's economically irresponsible. So, but you're doing, through the 30 games or so that you have with those kids in a year, you're developing them. You're teaching them how to compete, some of them. Some kids are talented, they don't know how to win. So you're trying to teach them how to compete and win. Some kids have never failed before, and they get in a bad place just because that's just the run of it, and they don't know how to deal with failure, or they succeed so quickly that they think they're there at 14 or 15, and they're not. And then when they fail, it makes it about 100 times worse. They don't know how to deal with it. So we're always, as coaches, club coaches, high school coaches, college coaches, you're doing more than one thing at a time. And that's what's difficult for young coaches to articulate the parents, combined with the amount of insulation they keep around themselves from the parents. I always try to remind young coaches, because it's really interesting to me when I'm instructing either federation licenses or our diplomas. I ask people, so here's a 32-year-old over here, here's a 40-year-old, and here's a 29-year-old. And I'm like, where do you see yourself? What are you working towards? And so whether they're 40 or 29, like, well, I want to be an MLS coach. I want to be a USL coach. I want to be an NWSL coach. I want to coach the national team. But those are the same people, sometimes, regardless and irrespective if they're 40 or 29, that they can't talk to parents, or they can't communicate well enough for a youngster. You think it's going to be easier talking to a pro? You can't talk to that parent, and you want to talk to a full-grown man or woman who's a professional, and you think you're going to make sense to them. Wow. That's the hard part of everything, that managers, coaches either succeed or fail with. That's not entirely what they do with soccer. We all know that. You can have the best ideas, whether they're too conceptual, idealistic, but you think talking to a pro, you're 40, maybe you didn't really have, maybe you've been a good coach in the youth or the college game or whatever, but you don't really have the experience of being around pros. You think you're going to go into a pro locker room, even in the USL, and you're going to explain to a 32-year-old man or woman why this is the way it is. Man, it takes a whole lot more than just standing behind the podium and slamming out a PowerPoint. You have to validate yourself to those people. And that's why I think it's interesting. Guys like Jose Mourinho, who was a good player, I mean, but he was not an international. He was not a top-level pro. And this guy can make sense to guys like John Terry. And they love him. They revere him. They respect him. But young coaches don't understand what it takes to get there and what the price is that it exacts out of you in order to learn how to deal with all that. It may not be in you. You may be better off coaching the freshman team at high school or the B team at a really good club. Maybe that's your niche, but it's really hard in listening to people. You don't want to rain on their parades, So, but geez, if you think this is hard and you want to be a pro coach, this should be the training ground, and these are the things you should be concentrating on rather than, well, how do we create an overload with my 12-year-olds in the central channel, and over embellishing that. Parents love it when they hear about that, but if you can't talk to the parents, you can't really articulate it. It reminds me of Einstein when he said, what you're explaining, if you can't explain it thoroughly to a 6 or 7-year-old, then you don't know enough about it. And if you have problems communicating, the other interesting thing that you're talking about in the birth year change, why are we doing this? We're doing this because the kids socially are better together. It makes more sense. I find it interesting, to your point, Steve, that in these clubs, once you get in the routine of not only weekend games, but going someplace for 3 games, and it becomes a social event for the parents. That's not why we organize the teams the way they do. You're not going to end up going through 6 or 7 years of youth soccer, and you'll always be friends with people, but there may be a lot of reasons why you don't end up being with them those 6 and 7 years. So it's very interesting. It's got a lot of nuances and, let's say, sophistication, but we've kind of helped create this framework now. But those young coaches, we have to give them support, and then they have to be responsible. They're going to have to have some rough times talking. How about with the board members? Let's go there. That's not always, the most enticing part of what we do is state board members, club board members. It's hard. You have to figure out why they're on the board. You have to figure out what they're what's in it for them. What do they perceive that's in it for them? So this whole realm, I wonder what it's going to be like, not in 10 years, that's too far out. I wonder what it's going to be like in 3 or 5 years. If it's like this right now, what could it possibly be like in 3 more years? I have no idea.
The last 5 years has changed dramatically, I think. The whole dynamics of the landscape of soccer has changed tremendously in the last 5 years. Yeah. I mean, when I was a director for some of the programs and someone came to want to work for us, first thing I would say is, give me your philosophy. What's your philosophy? Right? And that some of them look at me like, what? I said, why are you doing this? Until you know why you are doing it and how you translate it, there's no way you can give information to kids. Right? So as soon as they get me the philosophy, you can read a lot about that individual from their philosophy,
Sure.
And then it's amazing how many people do not understand how to do a periodization plan either for the development of their teams and their age brackets for their teams.
Yeah.
And what I've been saying to a lot of our coaches and a lot of coaches in general is, watch your principles, stick to your principles. Why are you doing it? How are you delivering it? And why are you delivering it? And once they start understanding themselves, and I think the biggest thing is self-assessment. It's amazing how many people do not understand how to do a self-assessment. And you kind of have to walk them through it a little bit. And it's not their fault. It's just they've never been exposed to it. So we've got to teach them as mentors and instructors.
Well, that whole process is, and you can tell. Could say, how was that? How was that? Was that good? I don't know. Was it? I mean, we're too connected to that was good, that was good, that was good, rather than fostering an attitude where it's like, do you think it's good or not? Or, look, I was using this 1, 2, 3. Were you good in training today? 3, no, bad. Okay, you're going to have 3s. Or 2, I was so. I was so. Or was I a 1? I was good today. I was good, And I think more now than ever, kids don't have clarity with that, because some of that starts with like, do you know what you're good at? Tell me what you're good at. And inevitably, 80% of the kids will start off and say, I'll work really hard. And then when things get difficult, they can't deal with it physically, or they can't deal with it psychologically. But wait a minute, you told me one of the things you did was you worked really hard. What's your definition of working hard? They don't really know what that is. Their perspective of it in today's world is very different. I heard an interview not long ago, and I was talking to a national coach not long ago, a European, who was talking about his conversations with his players, their club coaches, pro coaches. And he's like, look, whatever the differences are, how you play there, how you play here, how the team's set up there, how we set the national team up, nobody's ever going to say to you, you need to run less. Nobody's ever going to say, you don't need to try as hard. You don't need to cover more ground. Forget about all, you might do a little more of this here tactically or individually than here, but nobody's going to ask you to turn the temperature down. So get over it. Be adaptable. And our kids, 4 years ago, I just coached an NPL group here in Kansas City. And the parents were a marvelous group of people, because I tried to be honest with them, and they grew into appreciating my candor. But one of the first things I said to them after a couple of months, I said, your sons are 13 going on 14. If they ever tell you anything is hard, tell them they are not trying hard enough. They don't know what hard is. No, none of them are going and delivering papers at 6 a.m. 6 days a week. None of them are, they're just not. They don't know what hard is. And I actually had a couple of mothers come to me and say, like, I never thought of that. I never thought about that. And I was like, it's just where parents are at. They don't, when their kid comes to them and says, this is really hard. I mean, if I was a parent, I'd be like, I don't know how hard that is. You're not shoveling coal. You're not You're not delivering papers in 3 feet of snow at 6 a.m. You're not. What's hard? So some of that comes down uh, to the experiences, right? But you're absolutely correct, man. It's different. It's a lot different.
Let's pivot real quickly. We've talked primarily about the coaching side, but and touched on the actual player themselves. So Steve and Dave, one of my big things is of course mindset, belief system. The name of this podcast, Raise the Standard, because Steve and I, as we were talking over the last number of months, it just seems like, man, standards seems like they're negotiable in the current culture, especially with young people, that generation. And that's not a criticism; that's more of an observation. But so let's talk about that, Dave, from your perspective, and Steve, what's going on in the mindset of the kids today, the younger kids, and how they're dealing with challenges, how they're dealing with expectations or standards. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's different. To your point, Steve, Hawaii is a little insular because you're 4-hour flight from the mainland. It can develop its own culture within there. And there are places in the mainland in the excuse me, in the US, not everything is Dallas and Houston and Philadelphia. You got Des Moines, Iowa. The definition of good or a sufficient standard in Des Moines or in Tyler, Texas, might be a little bit different than what the standard is. And I think that's what you were alluding to before, weren't you, Steve?
Yeah. I mean, we was talking last week about the difference with why a lot of college coaches go international for their rosters, because us in Europe, we get brought up where you're a football player or not. You're good enough or you're not. That's the way we get taught. And to get out of the environment you're in, you play football because that's the payout for you. And I relate it very much to here in the US. Your basketball, your baseball, your American football, right, is something to get them out of the environment they're in to a better environment. So they have more of the passion and the drive to do it, because if you're going home and you're only having one meal a day, you're going to go out and grind so you get 2 meals a day, rather than somebody that comes home to 3 square meals a day and they get picked up and driven to school, from school, and whatever else. You're not really going to have that desire, and I heard a great saying 2 weeks ago: you're showing up like it's a PE class. You're ticking the box and leaving. And I think that to get that passion and that desire, you either got it or you haven't. You can't create it really unless you're a recruit in the military, where they're going to put you through boot camp to create it. So
great example,
Steve.
That's a great example.
The mindset is okay, I didn't make it, but guess what? I'm still going to go to college. So the difference in the mentality in sports is to me the big gaps.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the great opportunities. We don't know when we're young and kids, playing different sports. We don't know it. We don't know that going to be new, unfamiliar, either social experiences, psychologically, learn what competition is, learn, eventually, how do you balance winning and losing, and put it in perspective. That's where the coach comes in, the parents come in to make sense of it, because you can't convince me that a kid loses the game at 11 or 12 and that's who they are. They're a loser, And so we have to be cognizant of that. But it's a great experience to be in a team, to train together. It's not only what happens in training together and get to know people. Now it's very different. As a kid, all the kids, we played together, so we kind of knew each other. Either we went to parochial school, public school, just about everybody. There are a few people that you don't. But now, at 11 years of age, you got people being collected into teams, and those social skills are really important. The social adaptability is really important. Who models that? The parents and the coach. So I think there's a lot more that goes into this than, we think very one-dimensionally about, like, is my kid improving? Is the team winning or performing? And the kids are trying to figure it out, and it's not that simple. But think about how much time, pro coaches spend in, all right, we got 3 Italians in here. We have 2 people from the Bundesliga. We have 5 people who are English, a couple that are Scottish, and we're going to put it all together here. It's not thoroughly about soccer. It's about, like, how do we manage the environment? How do we get these guys to get along? How do we have them make a social connections? Not everybody is gregarious as an adult. So you're going to have some shy people. So I just think there's more to this than, all right, we're going to go through the selection process, tryouts. You're going to throw a bunch of kids together
one day.
And and then you're going to go, like, well, I think we got some talented kids, but how do you get them to play together? That takes more than just tactical understanding or whatever. It's hard.
What we did, again, coming from Charlotte, which has multiple players in Charlotte, like my old club had about 12,000 kids in the club, and then you come to an island concept. It's very much like when I used to be in Florida. It's a different mentality, to a point. What we did in my program, anyway, we created a leaderboard, right? So we have throughout the year, with what we've got with our periodization aspect, is testing. So say the beep test, you got to hit 15 on the beep test, right? So you put the leaderboard there. So now the ones that really want to compete, right? Yeah. You set in the training environment straight off the bat, because now they're all asking when we're doing that test again, because now they've gone home and they're doing additional work because they want to beat Johnny Smith next door to him. I want to be on that leaderboard. I want to beat him. I want to get ahead of him. So we've created that, and our fitness criteria now in our program is far superior than we've seen now on the island, because just the fitness aspect of it, never mind the speed of play where they're moving with the ball and stuff like that. We've created that mindset of winners, and we're very conscious too of the player that's highlighted that's struggling, because it's not only the number ones and number twos and number threes you got to look at that 29th player now. How can we help that player come through a little bit more? Then you don't want to highlight them too much being on the bottom of the totem pole. You've kind of got to help them through a little bit, and be very aware that you're not isolating the wrong criteria, But again, it's called a competitive sport for a reason.
But even for the 10-year-old rec player, they learn how to adapt socially, psychologically, physically. It's a great illustration of, just being fitter it affects your psychological fitness too. when you're not fit relative to whatever, you're sucking swamp water you don't feel very good. It's not like it's a lot of fun, and you're trying to play and participate. So I think all of this works together, and that is where, if the kid comes out of 5 or 6 years of that, or 7 years of that, and they're just a decent player, but they've improved in all of these other areas, forget about college scholarship or anything else, or it's been worth it because they get a set of experiences there, whether it's basketball, soccer, hockey, doesn't really matter. They get a set of experiences in sport that help them grow up, help them know, well, what does performance mean? What does training mean? What's all this mean? I hear people talk about it. And if you listen to parents, if they come to one extra training session, then that should fix everything. And it doesn't. We all know that. So I just think it's a whole scope of experiences. And sometimes you got to educate the parents about that. What's your kid really getting?
I was talking to Van Taylor yesterday, right? And anyway, I told him we were speaking today, and he told me to say hi to you. But Van's still at Lander University, and he's over business development, right? And he was saying that part of his job is obviously to move the players from college into the business sector, and he was saying that the biggest thing that the CEOs and the interviewers for the interviewees is structure. They're on time. They're used to working. They're used to working as a team. So everything he ran off was the social aspect of being in a competitive environment.
Right.
Nothing about what sport they was playing. It's the structure in life in general that sport implements into an individual.
Right. It's always going to be that way, and if it isn't, there's something wrong with the way sport and society intersect. I just learned something about Van Taylor within the last week or two. Somebody had asked me if they knew who Pelé had scored his last and final bicycle kick on, and it was Van Taylor. And
He's got a picture of that. He's got a picture of that still on his phone.
Oh,
it's black and white, but still a picture. It's great. It's great stuff. I never knew. I
never knew that. So I was just like, well, it's distinctive. It's distinctive. Now if he would have stopped it, it would have been more distinctive. But that's okay.
What if either one of you guys? What would you say to the youth player? And we've touched on it here in these conversations, but what would you say that they can do at all the different various stages? But again, I go back to toughen up this mindset and adjust this mindset that's going to allow them to be able to enjoy success. What would that look like if you had a conversation with a group or just even one-on-one?
I would say set your own standards and don't compare yourself to others. You can have role models, but set your standard, and stick to it, and don't let the devil on the one shoulder saying, why are you doing this? You can miss a day, right? Where the other one of the shoulder, the good guy is going, no, you can't miss a day. You got to do it, and I think this environment we're in today, it's easy to quit rather than work your way through stuff. But yeah, I'd definitely say set your own standards and achieve your standards. I mean, I say it all the time, with the jobs I've done and the different places I've lived, you've got to come in and show what you can do. Otherwise, you're not going to work. And most people want to just stick and be comfortable with what they're doing rather than raising the standard. Obviously that's what we how we decided to start having these little chats, But again, I'd say set your own standard. Don't compare yourself to others. Just use others as role models for you to make your own standards.
It's really not hard enough, and it doesn't stretch you. Then you got to go find something that, if you want to really be better, if you want to really figure out what it takes, then you better go in the old neighborhoods, 12-year-old kids were able to play pickup games with 16-year-old kids. Now, you got knocked around a little bit. Sometimes it was just a matter of survival, and figuring out how to do that. But if you're the best or you're too comfortable, to your point, Steve, then you got to go find something that's going to be more challenging and dip your toe in the water and be okay with, like, all right, that wasn't very good today, or that was a little uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, those are the experiences that ultimately make you better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I must admit, a little story here. Like, the wife and I was really decent athletes coming through, and when we had our son, and he went into baseball, right, which we ain't even going to go there, but it's still fun watching him play because he's doing something structured, and sometimes we look at each other and we go, he cannot be our kid. But again, we have to go back and go, stop comparing him to what we had, because he's got a different upbringing than we had, and it's fun now because he's 12 and the light bulb's gone on a little bit now. He's playing first base and everything, but I tell my mom sometimes, he just doesn't apply himself. She went, oh, that sounds familiar. I said, what are you talking about? When I was coming up, she went, no, you didn't, because you found it easy. And then when we moved you into the you stepped it up again, and you just was doing it, whereas now the light bulb goes on with our son and we go, oh, okay, he's doing all right. He's developing, he's got the highest batting average on his teams. He's playing on 2 teams and he's a lefty. So, I always tell him, I said, there's times to shine, buddy, and this is it. This is the day. It's times to shine, So, showing you, a little story.
Yeah, Dave, you would love to be around Steve out here and I'll be on the phone with him. I'll say, hey, what's going on? What's happening today? And I'm being facetious here, Steve, so don't get mad at me. But he'll say, oh, I've got to go to the baseball field again for 3 more games. And it's just like, come on, this is going to be the next Babe Ruth. He's going to do it.
Yeah, it's your retirement plan. What are you doing?
I told him I'll be his agent when they start knocking on the door.
That's a good place to be, man.
I said to him last night, I said, oh, you don't have baseball practice. You want to come to goalkeeping practice tonight? He went, no. I'm like, why don't we run around a little bit? He went, no.
No. Baseball players, I've never known any of the baseball players that have been around where they've gone, their biggest question is like, how do you guys run this much? And so how do you guys run? Why would you want to? Why would you conceivably want to run like that for 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 minutes? I'm thinking like, really like to play. I couldn't play baseball. It's different sport. Different.
I said to him, if you hit the ball at the park, you don't have to run so fast. Make sure you get out of the park.
Well, listen, hey guys, we this whole thing, Dave, and you and I did many podcasts together with our Belief Hacker back in the day. But this whole idea about standards, raise the standard. That's kind of what's driving me and Steve to hear from many different perspectives, people with a lot of life experience, such as yourself. And as we keep playing with that idea of standards and mindset, well, a group I'm coaching right now, not in soccer, but just some executive coaching. I used this quote with them the other day, and it just said, never lower the standard because the day got harder. And I think that's a big thing for us as adults as well. But just because the day gets harder, you don't compromise and negotiate your standard. If anything, you try to raise it even higher. So let that kind of drive us. And with that quote right there, Steve and Dave both give insight into that, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
Well, I just think I would go back to what I said before. Like, if what you're doing is so easy and you're so good at it at that level, you better go find some other people to do that with, that is going to be in some way, shape, or form more challenging. If you want to get better, if you want to get better, if you're not afraid of the day getting harder, if you don't know how it's all going to work out when the day gets harder and you don't have any hard days, you're going to be in for a really rude awakening.
Yeah, I mean, we all know that coaching today is a young man's game to a point. There's a lot of people around there doing it, but I don't think that the young coaches today have the time to learn from people like us with life experiences, and I think they need to open up a little bit more. And even I sometimes forget how old I am and go toe to toe with them. Obviously we're not going to play a 90-minute game anymore, but I bet you if I'm on the field for 15 minutes, we're going to figure out how we're going to score a goal or put somebody through that can do it, So I think that, closing out, that anybody that's listening to this, gather as much information as you can from the people around you, and I was really excited to have Dave on today because, when we see each other at the coaches conventions, it's like you're competing against 60,000 other people to get 5 minutes conversation without being interrupted, and it's like, it's great to have at least an hour's conversation with Dave to kind of pluck information out of his brains. That two brain cells that chime sometimes, we can gather some information out of it, which to me is awesome.
Those two brain cells get connected one day.
There's no smoke coming out yet. So
Thing like that, So yeah, I appreciate it. It's been a great hour. It's been great.
As grown men, and I'm not saying anything that not sharing anything that we don't have familiarity with, but life is tough. I don't care who you are. Every day you wake up, you got that big old bear you got to deal with, and all of us deal with different things at different times in our life. And there's a few things right now, we're working through. But I said to my wife yesterday or day before, I would much rather be in a state of discomfort, in a state of uncomfortableness, as opposed to everything is just awesome and I'm sitting back drinking my Mai Tai in Waikiki. And I say that, again, that's a mindset, that's a raise the standard moment, because you grow more in those uncomfortable situations and you learn more about yourself in life. So that's kind of the last challenge I would throw out to all of us. Dave, Steve, you want to touch on that real quick and then we'll head out?
Yeah, but you're always around the pool drinking your Mai Tais. That's the problem.
Okay, well, besides that. Hey, listen, Dave, we appreciate your friendship. Appreciate you spending an hour with us. We'll get this video up on our YouTube channel. And Dave, I sent you both links to the Facebook page and the YouTube page. So feel free to share that with your colleagues. Well. And then next week, again, Steve, we are having on as a special guest
Van Taylor.
And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that bicycle kick, yeah?
We will. I hope you do, and I'm going to be listening.
Yeah, that sounds good. So this was episode 2. Next week will be episode 3. And we appreciate everybody sharing this time with us. Feel free to share our links. Remember, the standard is the standard. We appreciate you taking time to join us on Raise the Standard podcast. We'll catch you guys next week. Mahalo.
Cheers, Dave.
Cheers.
Thanks, Dave.
Have a great day.